Hello everyone, and welcome to today's Creative Connections webinar. This week, we are thrilled to have with us Mark Yettica-Paulson from the Birrah, Gamilaroi and the Bundjalung peoples. Today, Mark will be exploring the topic intercultural working. My name is Ian RT Colless. I am from the Darabalapp clan of the Gundungurra people, and I am the grandson of the late Auntie Dawn Colless. As a Darabalapp man of the Gundungurra, I pay my deep respect to the country I stand in today, the Eora of the Gadigal. As a coexisting member of the oldest cultures in the world, indeed the known universe, I and Mark am a result of this never, the dreaming. We are the oldest continuing cultures ever recorded. The totemic events that saw the creation of our countries teaches us about our connection to land and the boundless power of time immortal. Our peoples continue with our unstoppable ability to adapt. Without adversity, we will not be silenced. In paying respect to the Gadigal of the Eora, I described country. It is a country surrounded by salt water, light, and sky. Today, rain. It is a country that has magnificent cliff faces and ocean smashing into it, daily carving its existence. It has small to medium slopes and very few mountains, abundant in cheerful birds who sing me awake every day. I too pay my unstoppable respects to the country where you are streaming from, and elders of the past, present, and future of these countries, and any elders whom are present with us today. Please share the country that you are chatting with us today from in the chat feature, which is just below. We have the Kulin, the Gadigal, the Wudjak Nunga Wudja, Mo Wudjak Nunga, Narong, Wawadjri. I pay my deep respects to these people and their countries in which you may be streaming in today. Saturday, the 6th of June, will be a day that will go down in our shared histories. Last weekend, tens of thousands of people gathered across this nation, representing the diversity of clan groups, language groups, and a gathering of diverse allies. These protests occurred in capital cities, regional centres, all of which were largely peaceful. These people protesting to oppose the deaths of Indigenous people in police custody. For many people, these protests too were about something deeper. Were about opposing the ongoing systemic racism of my peoples and marginalised peoples, Black peoples from across Australia and the world, and deaths that have occurred since colonisation, and their support in the Black Lives Matter movement, which, as we are aware, is occurring globally. Currently on screen, there is a blue PowerPoint slide with text, video boxes, and Auslan interpreters. I am a queer man in my early to mid-late 30s. I'm in front of a landscape cultural painting. I have black round glasses and messy hair. Just recently, the Australian Council for the Arts released the Cherish Fund. The Cherish Fund is an initiative created in response to the COVID-19 pandemic in which we find ourselves in, and distribution experienced by disruption experienced by First Nations cultural practitioners and artists within the sector and our community. The Cherish Fund has 3 grant streams. They are 1, live-in libraries to support our cultural knowledge. 2, creative practice, supporting artistic creative expression. And 3, creative workforce, supporting our arts workers in the digital world. I encourage you, if you wish to know any more information about the Cherish Fund, to have a look on our webpage or go to our Facebook page and send an email to us. All of the information can be found on our main website. However, today, Mark Yettica-Paulson from the Birrah, Gamilaroi and the Bundjalung people will be exploring the topic of working interculturally. He is the Core-Facilitator of the Custodianship program. The Custodianship program is a unique program and is for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander artists, arts workers and cultural practitioners from clan groups, language groups and career levels across Australia. Currently on screen is a blue PowerPoint slide to introduce our speaker and the Custodianship program. Mr. Mark Yettica-Paulson is a respected member of his people. Mark is the founder and chief of Super Native Unlimited, specialising in creative and cultural leadership development. Mark brings with him decades from his career, custodianship development and leadership development within the community and education sectors across corporate and government climates. Mark currently is with the Deep Collaboration Lead for the Collaboration for Impact, Australis, leading capacity building and learning networks for responding to complexity through effective collaboration. He has facilitated leadership programs and advised organisations such as NAB, the AFL, Medibank Australia, the Australian Post, and the Foundation for Young Australians. This creative connection sets out to ask, how can we more effectively listen and follow the custodianship and/or leadership of our First Peoples? Today is an opportunity to reflect. It provides us an opportunity to listen and learn from the Australia Council's custodianship program Core-Facilitator, Mark. Mark will share insights into culturally informed working practices. He will also talk to how we might find ourselves working more culturally appropriately and informed, and to find tools and considerations that are used in developing our practice together with independents and organisations. And with that, gives me my great pleasure to hand it over to my dear friend, my brother, Mark. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Ian, and thank you everyone for joining us. It's a real pleasure for me to be part of this webinar series. My name is Mark Yettica-Paulson. I am from the Birrah, Bundjalung and Gamilaroi peoples of this land. I'm also from Vanuatu and Scotland. My family on my mother's side are the Kirks from Cherbourg, Kirks and Fishers from Cherbourg. My family on my father's side are the Paulsons and the Currys from Fingal, the Tweed Heads, Beaudesert and the Taree Foster areas. I live and work on the Quandamooka coast, on the lands and waters where the Yagara, Turrbal and Quandamooka peoples, where they share the lands and waters. I pay my respects to them, to their ancestors, and to all your peoples and ancestors from the lands where you're from, but also from where you're calling from today to join us. I want to also extend my acknowledgement to the Australia Council, to the team that work behind the scenes, for my brother Ian, for the work that you do inside there, but also the work that's done by Laura, Francis, Kevin, and the others within the Australia Council who have been able to provide opportunities for people to come together and continue to reflect on our practice and continue to strengthen our knowledge in the work that we do together. So let's begin. So, you know what I neglected to say? I neglected to say about myself what I look like. I am dark skin or light brown skin, perhaps brown skin. I have short hair, which used to be dark, but now is mostly grey. I have a goatee beard, which is a lot grey. I'm wearing a blue t-shirt with some white writing on it. And I'm in my corner of my office where there's 2 small bookshelves behind me, a stack of books and some mess on my right-hand side, and a first painting that I did of the intercultural framework is sitting over my shoulder as well. On the screen, you've got the stereotypical depiction use of the slide. It's one of the standard slide decks from PowerPoint that has the stereotypical gallery depiction. There's the wooden floor leading to the blank white wall for us to place our artwork, as it were, onto that wall. And there's a red line in the middle of the screen, and there's text that says, "Watch this space." And I've used this deliberately as a tool to get us thinking about the whole placement of artwork, but this may have probably turned up in previous presentations before. But this will be the constant screen, and as I move to the next one, we'll start to get a picture of how we'll begin to create the intercultural framework as we share together. The next slide here on the screen, you will see that there's a brown rectangle, framed brown rectangle. And above the rectangle is the text that says brown land and ochre dry riverbed. And the brown land is separated by an orange colored or ochre shape in the middle, which is to signify the dry riverbed. The brown sections on either side of the dry riverbed are the cultures that we are living in and practicing in. But the ochre dry riverbed is where the cultures meet. The picture here that I want you to imagine is far away from the cities, where there are trees on either side, drawing water from underground, and there's the sound of breeze and birds, and the smell of heat and gum trees. This is our opening scene. So as we move through this presentation, I will keep referring to the brown rectangle throughout the presentation as I populate more of the elements of the intercultural framework. Today I'm going to walk through the intercultural framework that I've developed to assist the navigation of working across cultures. It's designed to highlight the purpose and intent of different spaces in the work that we do across cultures. I will continue to refer to the context of interculturally, or working interculturally with First Nations and other Australians as a context, but it can be applied to other contexts. As I present, you will hear assumptions and language that you might not agree with or that you might agree with. you may question or have strong opposition with as well. So I welcome the feedback and the dialogue. I've been working in this space for a number of years, and I really appreciate the insight and knowledge that others have to share with this. And plus, I'm really good at making mistakes, and so I'm happy to have you point them out to me as well. There's always mistakes that we make. The next slide that we have here is in the brown rectangle now, there are two purple circles, one in the top left corner, one in the bottom right corner. And the text above the brown rectangle says, deep purple space of deep cultural memory. And there are 3 bullet points: ancient memory, mental models, deep belonging. So regarding mental models, regarding ancient memory, I should start at the first one, shouldn't I? Regarding ancient memory, we are all ancient peoples. We all have generations that go back through time. We all have ancestors. And some of us remember our lineage and know our story, but some of us have forgotten it. Some of us are able to trace back our stories of who we are and where we're from, but some of us can't. But we all have an ancient memory. Mental models. We all have ancient stories that have culture and identity embedded in them. And these stories are about the beginnings of everything, and they place us as humans in relation to everything around us. These stories form our mental models in the way that we experience the world and our place in it. We may be chosen by God or by gods. We might be the people who've traveled across the seas. We might be the people who have traveled here many generations ago. Or we might be the people who have always been here since the beginning. These mental models shape our sense of belonging with relationship to our cultural memory. But the deep purple space of deep cultural memory, it cultivates deep belonging. The more connected we are to our deep cultural memory, the stronger our sense of belonging in the world is. Because it is based on the strength of generations of law, traditions, and practices. And it's not based on likes and shares like in the modern social media context. So in the context of working interculturally with First Nations and other Australians, we have to remove colonial romantic notions that the native people are the ancient ones and the rest of us are not. We all have embedded stories that inform our belonging and our place in the world. In this next slide, there are 2 blue circles now in the middle of the brown sections on either side of the riverbed. Above the brown rectangle is text, blue space of cultural practice. And there are 3 bullet points. The first, traditions and practices. The second, open gates and closed gates. And the third, strength and identity. Regarding traditions and practices, we all have traditions and practices that are part of our upbringing, lifestyle, and cultures. They are the activities and ceremonies and events that we participate in because it's who we are and what we do. These activities and ceremonies and events are important to us because we want to be part of them. But there are also others that we feel like we're obliged to participate in. Some of these will be formal and carry a strong sense of occasion, like festivals, weddings, and funerals. Others are less formal and feel natural or seamless to our everyday lifestyle, like the certain ways that you prepare to go to someone's home or to a birthday party, or how you might prepare yourself to go camping or to the beach. Open gates and closed gates. In the blue space of cultural practice, some of our cultural traditions and practices are open for everyone and all are welcome. This is like most of the events that are in public spaces. Various festivals, various cultural festivals, they're in the open space and we welcome everyone to come and participate. But there are some cultural traditions and practices that are closed and restricted to those who only have the credentials to be there. This is more than simply holding a purchased ticket. This is about whether you have the right to be there. For example, not everyone has the right to access all of the ceremonies that are part of a wedding or of a funeral. Various people will have different rights to be at different parts of those huge ceremonies. Finally, strengthen identity. The blue space of cultural practice in the intercultural framework is an important space to understand that participating in cultural practices and traditions defines who we are. It strengthens our sense of identity and belonging. The way that we practice our culture might be like the people who are around us, and they may look at us and say, that's great what you're doing because it shows you're building your culture and identity. Or it might be different to the people around us. And they may be looking at us going, I don't understand what's happening here. We all have cultures, cultural traditions, practices, and ceremonies. Some cultures are able to clearly define and instruct their practices and traditions, while others are less able to identify and articulate their traditions. In the context of working interculturally with First Nations and other Australians, it is important to work on the identity and the cultural traditions and practices that we carry with us. We all have them, and it's important to know what they are because we are carrying them with us into the engagement across culture. This is a fundamental principle in working across culture, and it is connected to other ideas like unconscious bias and cultural intelligence. On this next slide, there are two purple sections that are now on the side of the Ochre Dry riverbed. The text above the brown rectangle says light purple riverbanks. There are two bullet points: environment changes and awareness to engage the other culture. The purple riverbanks signify a change in the environment, a shift that happens. You notice when you're coming close to the riverbed, you become aware of how you feel and how you're thinking and of the expectations that start to rise up because you're going to start engaging with the other culture. And these are the culture from the other side of the river. So the purple riverbanks are important to remember that it's the beginning of our awareness around we're going to go and see these people and engage with these people. On this next slide now, I've put two red circles in the middle of the purple sections on the sides of the Ochre Dry riverbed. Above the brown rectangle, it says red teaching space. There are 3 bullet points. First, teaching role. Second, learning posture. And third, always learning. Regarding teaching role, some cultures are well practiced at teaching and instructing their stories, practices, and traditions, while others are less able to identify and articulate them. Teaching is not only about the transference and testing of information. It is about sense making, bringing understanding, equipping people to navigate cultural landscapes, and growing wisdom to guide generations to be honourable and to sustain our cultures. Learning posture. Learning posture is about the openness to receive the teaching, instruction, and guidance. Now, this does not mean the absence of curious questioning or furious debate. It does mean that we are open to having our mental models challenged and changed. It also means that we are able to keep our self-image humble enough to hear the wisdom from the other culture. And finally, the red teaching space helps us to understand that we are always learning. Most cultures in the world now have a sense of formal schooling. A couple of generations ago, that was definitely not the case. Learning was a constant, lifelong expectation, woven into daily routines, regular practices, and formal ceremonial occasions. We had learning all the time. In the context of working interculturally with First Nations and other Australians, we should be prepared for reciprocity in the teaching and learning. That is, we should be prepared to share that we know about our cultures, we know about our traditions, and we know about our stories. We also should consider the impact of schooling systems that construct teaching and learning as an information testing regime. It's a factor in contributing to our high levels of anxiety about getting things wrong. This next slide now has a yellow circle in the middle of the ochre dry riverbed. The yellow circle signifies the yellow pragmatic space. So above the brown rectangle is the text, yellow pragmatic space. There are 3 bullet points: getting things done, working existing paradigms, and thirdly, focus on how. Regarding getting things done, human beings are also human doings. We work, we construct, we collaborate, we create, we compete, we achieve, we get things done. All cultures through generations have systems to regulate natural human tensions of work, rest, and fun. I was going to use work, rest, and play, but that's already been used by someone else, so I left that. But meeting in the riverbed, in the yellow space, is focused on getting things done. It's practical, it's pragmatic. We need to have enough knowledge of each other and enough respect for each other so that we can get the work done side by side and achieve together. We will make mistakes. Let me repeat that. We will make mistakes. It's not a matter of if, it will happen. But our desire to partner and to achieve together what we couldn't achieve alone, this should help drive us to build trust and work through our mistakes. We don't neglect them, we don't hide them, we don't turn away because we've made one. We stay together and we work through them. The second bullet point, work existing paradigms. With our focus on outcomes and achievements, we will need to work within current existing paradigms. Whether our goal is to strengthen the existing structures or to make change, we will need to start building momentum from our own starting points within the current context. To work together, we will need to be able to cultivate shared language, understanding and experiences, but also to build memories together. Our stories won't just come from one side of the riverbed, but our shared work practically means that all of our awesome wins and our epic fails becomes our shared story of what we've performed together. We'll need to be aware, though, that we have to pay close attention to the dynamics of power. We will need to develop skills in noticing who has it and who and how they are using it. We will also need to work together to become more aware of our own power and that we're carrying into this pragmatic space. Thirdly, focus on how. In this space of the yellow pragmatic space, the purpose and intention is to focus on how. Here is where we find the questions: how do we do this? What's the meaningful step that we can take together? What do you need from me, and so on. In this space, we will find a clash of expertise and experience mixed with cultural knowledge and ranging abilities to communicate. It will feel like a wild and crazy dance floor. But as we try to figure out each other's moves and get our rhythm and flow together, we try to do this without knocking each other out. In the context of working interculturally with First Nations and other Australians, we will have to free ourselves from the pressure of never getting it wrong. And we will have to focus more on what it takes to get better and to do it right. On the screen now, above the brown rectangle, are the words Green Innovation Space. I've put a green circle in the ochre dry riverbed, and the green circle signifies innovation. There are 3 bullet points. First, hybrid. Second, innovation. And third, focus on why. Regarding hybrid. Hybrid is about working interculturally that can provide the opportunity to develop ideas that don't belong to one culture alone, but it's a bringing together to share in something bigger and greater. The hybrid nature means that it's shared in origin and expression. It also means that ownership and custodianship is negotiated and shared. Negotiating hybrid solutions and ideas and ways of working together requires cultures to work through power dynamics and continuously build more trust in communication. Innovation. The drive to look beyond our current existing paradigms and to explore new ways of working and improved arrangements means we have to drive innovation in sharing power. Sometimes this type of innovation requires us to travel back to understand the cultural practices and our deep cultural memory. But sometimes it means we have to look to future scenarios and identify the collective work to get there. Finally, the Green Innovation Space focuses on why. And it focuses on why, sorry, I'm shuffling papers here. It focuses on what are the future orientations for generations to come. It is our jointly articulated shared desire for the future. And it is based on a fundamental discontent with the status quo. In this space, we acknowledge that we have inherited from generations before us some of the legacies that are connected and interconnected and that have been passed on to us from previous generations, but we are more intersectional than previous generations could ever comprehend. And the next generations will take us beyond even our imaginations. And the green space in our work interculturally means that we have to look to a possible future that requires hybrid innovation, and it will be created by the cultural collaborations as we explore new ways to sustain all of our cultures. Now, in the brown rectangle, I have now included the tracks that sit between all of those circles, colored circle spaces. Above the brown rectangle, it says all the spaces with the tracks. From the deep purple circle, there is a single track that goes to the blue circle. From the blue circle, there's a single track that goes to the red circle. From the red circle, it splits into two tracks, one to the yellow and one to the green. There is a single track between the green and the yellow in the dry riverbed. This is the same for both sides of the riverbed. And this is the final image of the intercultural framework. Now, very quickly, I want to finish with two short stories about focusing on the deep purple space of cultural memory. The first story is about, sorry, I've changed slides. Above the brown rectangle is the text that says focus on deep purple space of deep cultural memory. There is text that says two stories. First, a First Nations man meets a rabbi. Second, a dreaming story about the sun and moon. So I will be quick with these ones. On the first story, a First Nations man meets a rabbi. It might be the opening line to an awkward joke, but it is from my personal experience. In my exchange with a rabbi in Melbourne, we were able to connect our similarities and differences in cultural practices. And we were able to relate how our peoples carry thousands of years of knowledge and try and appropriate that into modern life. And while it was inappropriate to discuss spiritualities, we were both fascinated by the contemporary culture navigating the modern world, but using ancient stories from the beginning of time. The second story is about a dreaming story about the sun and moon. Now, this is not my story from my peoples, but it is a story that we are all exposed to in our modern lives. I'm not sure exactly when it started, but it begins with that classic thing of many, many thousands of years ago. So I'm going to give you the really, really short version. Our ancestors watched the 5 brightest stars and the sun and the moon move across the sky. And over thousands of years, they spoke about the stories associated with those 5 bright stars and the sun and the moon. And then over time, those stories became intermingled and intertwined into our cultural practice and our daily routines and our seasonal ceremonial occasions. And then fast forward, I told you I'd be quick. Fast forward 250 years ago, Europeans brought that dreaming story to this land. This dreaming story is about the 5 or the 7 days of the week. They are based on the 5 planets that we can see in the night sky and the sun and the moon. Now that's a dreaming story. That's an ancient memory dreaming story. And it's from the peoples who came on the boats. There are 2 takeouts from the understanding of the deep purple space of deep cultural memory. And the 2 takeouts are, first of all, that you get to know your own story better. And second of all, the takeout is that you be kind to yourself about the level of knowledge that you have. Now, in the interest of time, I'm going to move through the next slide extremely rapidly because it is about the focus on the yellow pragmatic space. That's the text above the brown rectangle, focus on the yellow pragmatic space. And I want to talk about how there is power in being naive. The 2 bullet points that are there are, there's power in being naive. There is also more power in being informed. And the 2 key takeouts in the text here on this slide are being curious and committed to step up. And the second and final bullet point is being committed and courageous to stay. It is important in this yellow space that we are committed to work together. And there is power in being naive and just stepping into it and showing the guts to get involved. But there's more power in being more informed and bringing your culture and your expertise with you. And the 2 key takeouts are that we need to be curious enough to get involved, but committed enough to step up and be involved. But we also then have to be committed and courageous enough to stay, even and especially when we make mistakes. Finally, folks, the last slide I have for you is the brown rectangle has now above it the text that says key takeouts for working interculturally. There are 3 bullet points. The first bullet point reads, get to know your deep cultural memory. It is the deep roots of identity and your long story of belonging in the world. Second of all, you ought to practice staying curious and committed to working pragmatically. We will make mistakes, but it is our willingness to keep going and work through the difficulties that builds our trust. And finally, try using this framework to apply to your context. Take it, try it on, see if it makes sense to the world in which you work. Thank you so much for your time. I now show you the very final slide, which is the blank wall again with a single red line. And it now says over to you to claim this space together. Thank you.
Mark Yettica-Paulson, always an absolute pleasure and delight. Thank you so much for taking the time to share with us a framework that you've been developing and the foundations of how you apply your ways of intercultural learnings through your cultural and your human development. We're very deeply grateful.
Thanks, man.
If anyone has any questions, please feel free to pop it into the Q&A and we will get to them. I have a question, I guess, to start us off with. Why intercultural?
Well, as First Nations people, we have to wrestle with the reality that we've got to work in strengthening ourselves and our own culture and our own identity and our own custodianship. But we also have to work with and partner with others and, to achieve things in the here and now, but also the future we're going to is much more intersectional than we know was going to. So we're going to have to work interculturally as we move forward.
Well said. What I liked about what you discussed is the power of being naive. From my personal developments, and I believe you and I have talked about this in great lengths before, there's that notion of the Western notion of education or leadership, if you will, that is about I am entitled to learn. I'm going to pay for my education and I'm going to move and progress myself up the education system. And then you had talked about it briefly before about that notion of, I guess, and I'm paraphrasing, a education system that is earned and is a lifelong cultural pursuit. It's a lived in pursuit that is informed in a social governance. Would you like to unpack what that might mean when working in this intercultural framework that you're discussing with us, Brother Mark?
Yes, in short, what it means is that the formal schooling section of our upbringing and our life is only a slice. And as First Nations people, we carry a lifelong expectation on us to learn as we grow older. So my greyness in my beard now indicates that I have a knowledge and wisdom that I didn't have when I was dark-haired and running around in Brisbane 30 years ago. And this lifelong expectation means that the older we get, the more wisdom we have to contribute to the generations below us. And that cycle is so important. And that's a cycle that has been forgotten in the so-called Western modern world, where the elderly are no longer required. In our systems, the elders are central to hold our cultural stories. And so that notion is really important in the way we try to work across cultures. So many times my own children have said, why are those old people by themselves? And I think that's part of the notion that we carry, that as that's our worldview, that's our lens that we see the world in.
We have a question here, and I encourage you all to share your questions, don't be shy. Saying, what is your advice on negotiating power when working interculturally?
Negotiating power when you work interculturally is the foundational work. We will all come with power, and often we will not see it in ourselves and we'll see it in other people, but we actually have to use the power we've got. There is a privilege and power that I have, heterosexual male, going into a room, there is power that I have, and I need to use that responsibly. And so how my own awareness of it, but then I'll have blind spots in my power, and I'll need someone like yourself, Brother Ian, to go, hey brother, there was this thing, did you notice that? And I go, well, I didn't notice that. And that could be an abuse of my power or a misuse of my power. So negotiating power is like the bedrock. Now, when you start to work across cultures, across genders, across identities, intersectionality, you've got a whole world there that needs to be negotiated. You can't negotiate if you're there not to listen, you know, that kind of feel.
John Dewey, who was an educational theorist, used to talk about experience doesn't happen in a vacuum. And I agree. It's about, as you were saying, about being naive and also being open to learn. So I really appreciate you talking about that, brother. We've got another question here, and it's quite an interesting one. It says, Mark, it seems that there would be a number of practical steps that could be taken along the tracks. Have you developed these, and is there a program that could be undertaken to integrate them into a training within an organisation? And I know that you've had quite a lot of work in organisations, particularly with registrations of RTOs and what have you, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that's right. Look, one of the things that I've been reluctant to do is to build, you know, here's Mark's solution to the world kind of feel, you know, do this program and all cultures will be transformed. I try to present the framework as a way that we can see different spaces and start to share our language and have the discussions. I really like the idea of the practical steps along the way, and some of the ways that you can apply it in context is really important. At Super Native Unlimited, we're thinking of how we might use this as a program going forward, as a bit of a training kind of suite or something. We don't know yet, but at the moment, this as a framework, I want people to take and use, try it on, see if it makes sense.
Put another question here that I think is quite interesting. The latest research regarding resilience marries to personal strength and a sense of belonging. If cultures are not embraced in their deep sense of belonging, or open brackets, or celebrating their culture, close brackets. Is that a key celebration of a deep sense of cultural improvement of belonging, therefore would assist with us moving forward?
Yeah, so I get the essence of that question. If we have the so-called mainstream, or even our own opportunities to celebrate and to practice our cultures more openly and honorably, and people are able to say, hey, that's like mine, let me show you what I've got. And like, we have an opportunity to build upon the strength of cultural identity here in this country, as opposed to seeing it as, well, because I'm from white Australia, I'm completely deficient. And because you're from Aboriginal Australia, you're completely full. Reality is we're all trying to figure out how to be modern people and carry our cultural memory. And I think the more that we can honor and provide opportunities for people to celebrate that discovery and practicing and inviting, calling people in to practice and celebrate together, the more that it will become an authentic, genuine Australian practice, that we can do some of the cultural practices of First Peoples and others and start to celebrate together.
We've got a few minutes left, and we've got a wonderful question. And if it's okay with you, Mark, I was wondering if we could quickly answer it. Okie dokie. I'm really interested in the idea of everyone in the process being an ancient person and bringing deep cultural memories into shared space, whether we know it or can say, or can you say a bit more about it? So what would you say? Would you say things like, where do you come from? Or things like, where's home to you? Or what country did you grow up on? Or where do your parents belong? I think that's an interesting question.
Well, one of the very basic practical ways that I've developed to help us all carry an ancient memory with us is each of us has parents and grandparents and great-grandparents. Now, I know that some of us don't know that story through tragedy or dysfunction and all sorts of disaster that may have happened in our stories, but we have a lineage that we carry around with us, but we don't share that in ordinary Australian life. First Nations people, for us, it becomes what we trade on when we meet each other. Who's your mob? Where you from? So imagine if all Australians carried the story of their 8 great ancestors, their 8 great grandparents. Mine, what I shared at the beginning of this webinar, is I have one from Scotland, I have one from Vanuatu that goes offshore. How many of us as Australians have within our parents, grandparents, great-grandparents, a mixture of offshore people, people who've been here from the First Fleet descendants, people who are First Nations, people who are from the other side. We have such an eclectic and wonderful story that includes us First Nations people. That's what I hope we can bring as part of our cultural memory into the fabric of our Australian life.
And what a future to hopefully look forward to and be within. And I appreciate you taking the time, Mark, to share what that might look like and look for our peoples. In closing, on behalf of Mark and myself, I would like to do a bit of a roundup, if that's all right with you, Mark, and to reference some of the countries whom are streaming in today. We have the Whadjuk Noongar Whadjuk people, the Gilligan, the Wangeri, the Kulin, the Wangal, the Eora, the Gadigal, the Ngunnawal, the Jagera, the Turrbal, the Bidjigal, the Wurundjeri, the Yagara, the Darek, the Gundungara, the Birrah, the Gamilaroi, and of course, your peoples as well, the Bundjalung. I pay my deep respects to these countries, and my respects goes to all of those countries. On behalf of Mark and I, thank you very much to our interpreters today. Thank you to Kevin, Francis, and Laura, David and Shavoy. You guys are great interpreters and we adore you. And thank you everyone for coming today to try to question how one might work interculturally. To have you all here today lends Mark and I and my peoples an opportunity of great encouragement. So thank you so much for your time, everyone. Thank you, Mark.
Thanks.